welcome to BTN, our first roundtable. It's not literally round, but our roundtable discussion on classroom management. I'm so excited about trying a new format with my friends here from all over the district. I have with me today Alisha Washington. Wave
Hello.
to the camera. I've got, and she does what I do. I've got Tracey Lubawski. She's a middle school principal, but she's also been a principal in elementary, right? Okay. I've got Brian Foster, our teacher of the year, high school. Representing today Stacie Wood. She's our EC representative for the day. And I have Miss Dorothy Wehrly.
Yeah.
Okay, she's the instructional coach here at Anger Elementary. And Stacie, thank you for letting us use your office.
Absolutely.
So today's hot topic for our roundtable is classroom management. And I wanted to start off by asking the group. Everybody would probably agree that classroom management is harder now than it used to be. And so I'd like to ask the group why you think that's the case. Why is classroom management harder now than it was 10 or 15 years ago?
I think one of the things that we talk about with kids and changes over the past 10 to 15 years, obviously technology being a difference, but also expectations of the kids at home. And you know, the school expectation really hasn't changed that much, but what they're expected to do at home has changed. The dynamics within families are completely different than they used to be 20 and 30 years ago when a lot of the school system was set up as far as how we dealt with issues and things like that. So I think that's one of the things that we're dealing with is that they're, you know, what they want out of a kid at home is not the same thing that our parents maybe necessarily wanted out of us at home or in the classroom.
And I find that sometimes if parents have had negative interactions at school in the past, that they allow that to affect how they deal with school officials in dealing with their children. And so I don't think sometimes the support mechanism is there from the parents to the teachers. And so I think that definitely affects the way that the teacher feels supported, you know, in the classroom when having to call a parent about an issue.
I think too, teachers set up rules and procedures in their classrooms, but they also set up consequences. But is the follow through with consequences consistent? You know, if you put a consequence in place and you're not consistent with it, then, you know, it falls apart.
So what do you guys think some reasons are why teachers don't follow through with their behavior plan? Because I go in the classroom and I see it on the wall, but when I start asking them, where are they at in those steps, they don't know. So why do you think, what are some reasons why teachers don't follow through with their behavior plan?
Sometimes there's too many steps.
Oh, okay.
And when it gets laborious with, you know, first this, then this, and you forget where you're at in the process, you know, that can be a downfall.
We're busy. We're busy. We just don't
Right.
have time sometimes to take things by the horns individually with kids. So that can make it a lot more difficult as well.
I think teachers allow themselves to get frustrated with a child and take it personally, and sometimes they jump steps because they're being reactive instead of being proactive and trying to deal with strategies ahead of time, you know, seeing things before they actually happen and trying to work through them. They're being reactive after things happen, and then they're at the frustration level where they just skip into more punitive things.
Dorothy and I have talked, actually we were just talking today about the same topic, more on having our teachers focus on positives and the children catching them being good, making those good choices in the classroom versus always being the reactive, you know, and the more of those positive consequences versus always looking for the negative.
Right.
And I think everything doesn't work for, you know, what I might see Mr. Griffin doing in his classroom might not work in my classroom. I mean, I remember I was in the classroom and I saw other teachers using Class Dojo. And I was kind of like, okay, I'm going to use that. But I wasn't consistent with it.
Right.
And my students found out and were kind of like, you said when I get 50 points, this was going to happen. And I'm like, I meant 70 points.
Yeah.
You know, because I didn't have the prize for it. So I think that's important. Like, you got to make sure wherever you're using that you have researched it and you know all about it, because I did. I just saw other people using it. It's working for them. And I'm like, I'm going to try it without even kind of sitting down saying, will this work for my students?
Right.
Well, your class personality takes on your own personality. So
That's
you
a
have
good
to,
point, Ms.
you have to
Lebowski.
tailor, you know, what's going on in your classroom to your personality, because I mean, even piggybacking on somebody else is not always going to work, like you said. So
And don't give up on something right when you first start it and it's not going to work, because it probably will work a few days and then somebody's going to test it or try it. you can't just give up
Mhm.
and say, well, that didn't work, I got to try something else. You
Right.
got to let it run for a good period of time.
Yeah, the education thing is to go ahead and try something new immediately. we
Well-
see that in policy.
Well,
But also working within the framework of whatever your school's plans are.
That's a good point,
And
too.
they're set up, and that's going to be different, elementary, middle,
Yeah.
and high school, but also from school to school, and taking on the administration's personality as well. Alicia's 100% right. What you are in the classroom needs to be consistent, and you need to be you, because it's difficult to pretend to be somebody else for 180 days a year when you're teaching
Mhm.
children.
And modeling that behavior for the students.
Exactly.
Too.
Yeah.
Like constantly, if they see you looking people in the eye, or they see you not cutting people off, or having conversations with other students and adults, I think that would be helpful too. Like being able to model it.
But it's so different in elementary versus middle and high with classroom management, because elementary, the students have
The same
one teacher,
Mhm.
but they have the specials or resource classes too. But in high school world, in middle school, they're transitioning to teachers. So the best classroom management I see in the field is when those teams of teachers
True.
work together and they're following the same consistent plan.
Mhm.
They're looking for the same things, they're communicating about those and working together, versus I have to figure out how to behave in your room, and then it's a different way in your room and a different way in your
That's
room.
a good point.
That's hard
So-
as an adult. Like moving
Absolutely.
from school to school, like I have to figure out what my behavior should look
yeah.
like here and
Right.
here.
Right. So communication.
True,
With
and teammates works in the middle school level. It does not work as well, obviously, in the high school level, because it's more of a silo mentality of I've got my thing. But let's also be honest, that is the expectation of the world as well. And high schoolers should be transitioning into
Exactly.
an adult setting, which
Right.
I don't act the same way at church
Right.
as I do when I am
They should
at
have built
school.
those
or-
adaptive skills.
and that's
by
what they'll
that
have to
point.
learn as well. And they should be able to figure it out. But all of the teachers need to be consistent. That's where the framework from the school comes in, I would guess.
And and some schools have a great framework that teachers aren't using, like the agendas. The schools where they have where they sign the agendas, and I'll go in there and the kids will be hanging from the chandeliers, and there's no agendas out. So I don't, and I guess that goes back to what you were saying, Brian, about how you're busy.
You do get busy, but you find you've got more time when you have to chase kids down and pull them from the chandeliers.
Right.
Right.
You can actually teach a little bit more,
Mhm.
and a lot of times it's setting the tone early, but sometimes it's tossing something that doesn't work
Yeah.
for you, but also making sure that you're checking with the people within your school that are able to pull these things off, are able to take the school framework, agendas or whatever it is, and adapt them to their personalized classroom so that they can be themselves and make it work. Go to the people that it's working for and see what they're doing, and that's always probably, stealing from other teachers is the best thing that any teacher can do.
Mm-hmm.
I think in a classroom though too, procedures matter, routines matter,
Yes.
but organization matters.
Mhm.
If students are walking into a chaotic classroom, it just feeds into that chaos that can happen. But I'm a firm believer on, procedures and routines make such a huge difference with minimizing some behaviors that can be controlled.
Yeah, because your room is a reflection of you. I tell
Right.
teachers that all the time. You can't expect Johnny desk to be clean. We look at your desk and it's
Right.
terrible.
Absolutely. That's
Well-
like what Dorothy was saying with,
Yeah.
modeling,
Yeah.
right? Modeling organization, modeling, as an educator, you are a model all day long in so many facets, your behavior, your organization, communication, all of it. Eyes are watching you all the time.
That's
And, and if you're looking for a paper that you need to get the class started and
Yeah.
it's buried
Yeah.
and it takes you 10 minutes to find it,
Yeah.
what are the kids doing?
Yeah.
Right.
They're
and
going
the
to be
kid that
partying.
can't find
Yeah.
their homework,
Yeah.
well, you couldn't find yours earlier.
Yes.
So,
Well-
and you're like, well.
That's a good point too. That was a great start, you guys. I want to get to a couple of these questions because they came from one of our schools. Alisha and I did a PD and we asked them, they wrote down questions and these are the ones we didn't get around to. So I wanted to address these because they come from real teachers in our district. So what are some of the best strategies, you guys, for handling attention seekers, disruptive attention seekers? This is very common in our district, right? What are some strategies that some of our BTs could use to win those students over and get them working for them?
think you were talking earlier about rapport.
Relationships.
Relationships, yeah. And having that solid bond, knowing your students, knowing your learners, knowing their learning styles, knowing where they come from.
Knowing what the background is probably causing that type of behavior.
Right.
And build into that as well.
And they want positive or negative attention. If they're seeking attention, they're just seeking attention.
Yeah.
So if you can give them positive attention, that might help. Or if you know the background and you know where it's coming from, you might be able to find this.
And I think don't ever get into a power struggle with a child. Ignore the behavior if you can and address it privately later in a separate conference. Because no matter the age of the child, they don't want to be called out in front of their peers.
Right.
Especially, in a harsh manner. It's one thing to call their name to get their attention that you're aware of what they're doing, but we don't want to go beyond that. And if it's not interrupting instruction at that moment, it may be something that can wait to be addressed at a separate moment. But definitely, if you have a rapport with the child, that's a key indicator with how that child's going to receive however you address them.
Absolutely.
And I was lazy like I normally am, and I actually asked this question to my students and said, what are some things that you've seen teachers do who deal with your classmates who have done this sort of thing? One of them said, figure out who their favorite teacher is, talk to that teacher, and have that teacher talk to them. Make them the center of attention was one of the things. Give them some sort of task or something that makes them, and that is going to change whichever level you're on. And give them tasks, call on them for answers, and give them that opportunity to, like we said, model for them the times when it is appropriate and the times when it's not appropriate, so that they start to learn that, that sort of thing, and when you should and when you shouldn't.
Yeah. I always tell teachers, every child is not going to have negative behavior every moment of every single day. The ones that try you the most usually have perfect attendance. So you'll have all year to work with them, right? They're always there. But you need to catch that moment where they are doing the right thing, even if it's, you know what, you didn't call out for 30 seconds.
Yes.
I saw that, thank you. And just keep moving. Because like Dorothy was saying, most kids are just seeking attention, whether it's positive or negative. Some don't care.
Right.
Attention's attention. So if you can catch them being good, and that's when they get your attention, and that's something that you can control as an educator, like you were alluding to earlier.
And you can also front load their participation, meaning make them participate when you want them to.
Absolutely.
For instance, if one day they got a concept and they know the answer to a particular question, the next day when you're reviewing, call on that child. Or tell that child as they're coming into your classroom or whatever, hey, I'm getting ready to be calling on you today to answer something I know you've gotten and I need your help with it. And so what a great way, because they're going to be anticipating that.
I like that.
When it's their turn. And that's when they're going to get that attention that they're seeking, like you said.
And even front loading the behavior, like giving reminders before. Like, we're going to an assembly right now, and I know you're going to do a great job sitting right where you're, I'm looking, I'm going to be paying attention, and even front loading the reminders for the behavior.
Being proactive. That's a big thing.
Putting my EC hat on for a second, we need to make sure that, if you have students who have behavior intervention plans, make sure you're following those. They're written for a purpose, and they're written for the teacher to help, with those specific behaviors. So
you don't have to guess what works for that child. You already know what's working for that child.
Somebody already did that paperwork.
Yeah, we've already got that done.
And it's a part of a legal document, so we need to make sure that we are following those if that's in place for a student.
I do want to ask this question because this is a very common problem right now with guided reading in elementary. I'll go into a classroom and the teacher will be rocking it at the kidney table, but the rest of the class is an absolute debacle. So, and it could be in high school that you're trying to have one-on-one conferences with the kids and give the kids something to do. So what are some strategies for maintaining discipline in those centers while the teacher is working at the kidney table with a small group?
As an elementary teacher, you have to model what you expect for your students to be doing while you're in guided reading. If you don't model that, then they don't know. Every teacher does things different. I taught second grade. So, thinking, they're in second grade, they should know what to do by now. No, because some teachers are like, you just play on the computer while I'm over here. And some teachers are like, I just want you to read a self. And I'm like, No. Actually, you're gonna be in 4 different groups. You're gonna rotate when the bell goes off. But I had to model all that for them.
Right.
It took time.
Right.
Mhm.
You
I
can't
mean,
just start it.
No,
Yes.
I
You
didn't
have
start.
to teach it.
Yes, I didn't start
Yes.
guiding reading. I know to the end of September. I mean, I will always, tell admin when you come in, you might not see my students in groups yet because I'm still modeling those rules and those procedures.
Right.
And I see that a lot with teachers. They're kind of like, well, I model it and I show them, but they still don't get it. And I'm like, when did you model it? Well, that was the first week of school.
Mhm.
And I'm kind of like, it's October.
Yeah.
But modeling is practicing.
Yes.
Right. Practicing and
Yes.
then giving them feedback on what
Yes.
they're practicing to get better the
Yes.
next time.
And reviewing it.
And
It's
reviewing
not
it.
a one time deal. It's consistent and
Mhm.
practiced. And when we mess up,
Mhm.
we go back and we practice
Well,
and we
your-
review it again.
Your lesson plan and your planning for the activities has to be done right too.
Mhm.
I mean,
Absolutely.
that part that's the integral part. It's got to be done ahead of time. Then you can explain
Mhm.
explicitly, this is my expectation of what your product should look like if we're working in
Yes.
stations or something
Mhm.
in each of these places, and take the time to explain, station 1, 2, 3, and 4, what the expectations and what the product should look like for each of them. Then you probably can
Yes.
be a little more likely to be able to deal with a smaller group.
But you
Yeah.
also have
Oh,
to
yes.
have your awareness, hat on. And when
Mm.
you're in a group, there's nothing wrong with giving them a very short, simple task and making a loop for that
Yeah,
classroom,
that's a great point,
circulating
Ms.
through the
Lebowski.
classroom,
Yes.
Yeah.
so that they know that you're checking on them.
Yes.
Or not only that, if you have a sound signal when you're
Yes.
at your table, you can go and then they
Mhm.
hear that and they say they're
Yeah.
responding. They know that you're paying attention to what they're doing.
Right.
Yeah.
And so it keeps them alert the whole time that, even though you're over here with a separate group of kids, you are not disconnected to the rest of them.
Right.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And I think that's what happens. Is
Yeah.
yeah.
Some of them think, when my teacher get in that guided reading place, I get to play.
That's my
Right.
time.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
that is my time. In my
Right.
first couple of years, especially when I started teaching, I had a hard time with that because I'm kind of like, shh, I'm steady turning around, shh. And I'm like, okay, something is not right. I had to see. And as teachers, we're going to have to learn how to reflect at the end of the day.
Good point.
Absolutely.
I mean, each and every day, what went wrong, what went right.
Right.
And what can I do as a teacher to fix those things? One of the teachers I went and observed, she had a doorbell.
Mhm.
And so when the kids got too loud, she would press the little button, and like the kids are like, oh, that's the doorbell, that's the loud bell. That means we're too loud. I mean, they knew it, and I thought it was just so cute, as kindergartners,
Yeah.
that they were aware they were so loud.
Right.
So little things like that, like Miss Lebowski was saying. I used to put a necklace on, long silver necklace, and it was shiny. And they knew once I put that necklace on, you could not bother Miss Washington unless it was an emergency. And we talked about what emergency would look like or, sound like,
Mhm.
oh, I sneezed. Just get up and get a tissue.
Yeah.
But now Johnny throws up on the floor. Oh, that's an
Yeah.
emergency. Miss Washington needs to,
Right.
So I would say strategies like that to help out with guided reading.
I used to put my hand up in the air, and my kids knew that I was getting ready to give them something to do, and we always did phonemic awareness drills when we transitioned from station to station. So we played with sound. As they got up, I was asking them to do something with a word, and when my arm dropped, that's when they gave me the feedback that I was asking for. But when I started those drills, that's when our movement happened, and that was effective because transition time we lose instructional time with a lot. But we also need to make sure that our stations are made instructionally for our children on a level that they can't, if we're doing independent, that the kids can handle what's being done, because a lot of behaviors will show when the work is too difficult.
Yes.
If it's at a frustrational level or too easy, absolutely, solid point. That can spark behaviors.
Mhm. And not just the
And
first
that
thing you
is-
printed off of Teachers Pay
Right.
Teachers.
Teachers Pay Teachers.
Just so
Yes.
you could get your station.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
Okay, last question for the day. I want to talk about parent communication, quality communication with parents. We're seeing some teachers that are reluctant to call parents for whatever reason. How important is this aspect of classroom management, and what does quality communication with parents look like to you guys?
I think it's crucial
Yeah.
to education. I think it's crucial to working with any child.
Mm-hmm.
What does it look like? Again, I mean, a variety of things. We live in such a tech savvy world that,
That's true.
you know, we have a variety of ways that we can reach out. It doesn't have to be, you know, phone call only
Right.
kind of feel. So we can be thankful for that.
Especially when you have however many students in high
Yeah,
school.
you got about
I
100 or
mean,
so. It can
right,
make it more
that's a big
difficult.
difference.
But truthfully, it's just like what you said about catching a kid doing something right. So many of these, and depending on what level you're on, but on the high school level, that kid may have been in school 10 years and their parents have never gotten a positive phone call.
Mm-hmm.
And if you know ahead of time that a kid might be an issue and might have some potential for needing a parent,
Mhm.
if you get in on the front side of that and tell them something positive before you even have to call them about something negative, they'll trust you and believe you more. Part of that, it's harder for new teachers because you are exactly what you are when they walk in the door. Or teachers that have been around a little longer, they have built up a cult of personality, whatever, some understanding about who they are and how they do things and that sort of thing. So just like we say, front loading lesson plans and behavior expectations and stuff, if you make that connection positively with the parents, then that's more likely that they'll be on your side, I guess.
Absolutely.
And it's never too late to make that positive
No.
contact.
True.
Right.
True,
I mean,
true,
you
true.
may have, unfortunately, you didn't get around to it and you've already had to call, we'll say Johnny, since you used Johnny earlier, Johnny's parents 4 times, you know, and I don't like to call them negative phone calls, they're informative phone calls because I'm informing you of the progress of your child, either behaviorally, academically.
There you go.
And so, you know, another big thing to me is quality to me is that you're showing value to the parent, that you're showing that you're validating their concerns, that you are interested in solutions, and you may have exhausted every possible solution you can come up with. So ask them to be your teammate. Ask them, you know, have these issues been a problem in the past, and if so, you know, what have other teachers done? I'm willing to do anything to make your child successful, and you know, spending time with them on the phone, not making a quick phone call to say, hey, your child did this in my class today, and just be done with it. You need to make it a conversation, not just a blurb out to them, but be conversational with the parents, because they'll feel like you've invested in their child just through that conversation with them.
And being seen in the community when you see those people. The greatest interaction I ever had was with a kid who was probably one of the larger handfuls that I've ever had. And I just happened to see his parents at a yard sale and at their house. So I stopped to pretend like I was buying something. But what I was really doing was building some rapport.
There you go.
After that happened, that kid would do whatever I asked him to do because I knew the parents, and the parents knew that I wanted for that child just like they wanted for that child, and that we were on the same team. So much of it is combative and you know is me against you kind of thing, and that's not what it is. We're all technically on the same team. We're all against ignorance, and we're all for learning and education. And if we're all on the same team, then obviously we need to communicate and have the same goals.
And don't ever let anybody else scare you away from calling a parent. Oh, I had that child last year and the parent was just awful to talk to. You know, it just may have been the way that teacher communicated.
Yeah, that's a very good point.
I mean, it could be a multitude of things.
That's a great point.
But again, building rapport with that family, you know, and if you're a parent, if you're lucky enough to be a parent at the point that you have to make a contact, say, I'll tell them in a heartbeat, my child, if you know, what happens at my house, you know, but also just always appealing to them to follow up with their child. Well, I appreciate your support today. You know, if you wouldn't mind just having that discussion when they get home this afternoon, I appreciate it, and I'll follow up with him tomorrow. But just, you know, giving them a little bit of a participatory, you know, assignment to say, hey, this is partly, you know, on you too. It's not all on me at school. So,
and try not to let if your child or your students have an IEP, try not to let the IEP meeting be the first time you've ever spoken to the parent. That's tough, especially, you know, when teachers walk in and, I teach, you know, this, and they've never met you before, never heard, you know, heard your name or anything. So try to reach out before that IEP meeting takes place.
That's a good tip.
Yeah.
Any last minute quick tips for classroom management on it could be any aspect that you'd like to share or
I always say, keep in mind, particularly middle school and high schoolers, they may look like an adult and they may
True.
talk like an adult, but they are still a child.
there you go.
And a child deserves a fresh start every day. Just like we get a new sunshine every day,
Mhm.
the child needs to get a new sunshine every day in your classroom.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
Anybody else?
Over plan, as always.
There you go.
Idle
I
hands
say
are
that
the
all the
devil's
time.
playground. So
Right.
if I have a 90-minute class, I try to have 110 minutes worth of work.
Mhm.
And then that comes with, being able to deal with it more and more. But when I went from middle school to high school, that was the first thing. And I was a veteran teacher and I struggled because the classes were that much longer and I was not used to that. And so those end times where you're trying to figure out something to do at the end of the class, well, when the chandeliers came down, so that if you have something planned, even if you don't get it done, you don't get it
Right.
done. That's
Right.
better than running out of something to do and trying to print off something from teachers pay teachers.
Mhm. Anybody else?
Keep building those relationships.
Mhm.
I mean, you might not reach that student in December. Sometimes it might be May 1st. I know school ends June 10th.
Mm.
However, keep building that relationship and keep reaching out to them because there is a reason why students act out.
Yes.
And if you build that relationship with them and they see that they can trust you, they'll come and talk to you about the situation.
All behavior communicates something,
Mm-hmm.
It does.
and they're trying to tell you something.
They're trying to tell you, yeah.
But I think the one thing I would want any teacher to have as a takeaway, whether you're first year, first day, first
Mhm.
week, or veteran,
Mhm.
is that you're not alone
No.
in education. We're not on islands. You have support.
Mhm.
All you have to do is reach out or
Yes.
ask questions. I mean, our county is full of people that can support and help. So just know you're not alone.
Mhm.
And on the relationship piece, keep in mind that Johnny's not always an only child.
Right.
You might be having that sibling,
Mhm.
and then the next sibling,
Yeah.
and the next sibling. So if you've already built that relationship with that first baby,
Mhm.
then it's going to help you out later.
You're
It's
good to
very
go.
true.
Yeah.
All right. Well, this has been fantastic. This has gone like way better than I could have imagined. So thank you so much for your time, panel, and implement some of the strategies that we talked about today, please. And reach out to us if you need assistance. You're not in it alone. I think that's great advice. And there are people that will help you. We want you to be successful. We're all in it together. Thank you much.